Welcome to Gold Soul, where empowered parenthood and conscious living meet. I'm Jessie, a licensed home birth midwife, here to explore birth, parenting, and personal growth. Through real stories, reflections, and chats with holistic experts, we'll uncover fresh insights, heartfelt support, and a bit of humor. Let's laugh, learn, and grow together through the beauty and challenges life brings. Hello, welcome back to the Gold Soul podcast. Today we have Danielle with Verve Chiropractic with us, and this is going to be such an exciting conversation. Danielle is phenomenal, a mom, a business owner, a chiropractor, and she's expecting her second baby, and I am honored enough to be her midwife this time. So Danielle, do you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about what led you to become a chiropractor?
Hi, Jessie. Thank you so much for the great introduction. I am all the things and wear all the hats. And I originally became a chiropractor because, like most of us in, I think, the healing field, I had my own health issues. And it started when I was in high school. I had gut problems. I was from a pretty traditionally medical family, very allopathic in our approach. So I saw the typical doctors. I was prescribed the typical medications. And of course, like most people who navigate those challenges early on, I didn't see a lot of improvement. In fact, things kept getting worse. And so I started seeking answers for myself and found nutrition first. I got a degree in nutrition, and then once you go down the rabbit hole, you don't stop. And I ended up exploring chiropractic and learning about the nervous system and how much chiropractic could impact the way the brain and body communicated. And it completely changed my perspective on health and wellness. And so I had no choice but to become a chiropractor and, was able to heal myself and then get so inspired to heal other people through the same modality. Yeah.
That's amazing. I didn't know that you had a degree in nutrition, and that makes so much sense in all of our conversations. Like I'm always like, well, obviously she's really knowledgeable because, she's Danielle. She loves to research and she's a chiropractor. I had no idea. That is so cool. That's really cool. So, talking about pregnancy and postpartum and babies, what really drove you to specialize in that world?
That's a great question. And kind of going back to nutrition, I didn't start chiropractic as a prenatal or pediatric specialist. I really entered the field with my interest being in kind of the biochemical side of things. And so I started with functional medicine. I was more of a generalist working with adults. And in my practice early on, I started having adult folks come in and get pregnant. And it was like, wow, I should probably become an expert in this so I can take really good care of these people, in this phase of life. And just fell in love with pregnancy. I got Webster certified, started seeing more of those patients, and the changes that took place from preconception to birth and then into postpartum were astounding to me. I could not believe the amount of change that happened in the human body over that period of time. And I just fell in love with it. And of course, pregnant folks have babies. And so babies started making their way in my practice, and the same kind of line of logic pursued. And I just fell into it a little bit before any of my own experience becoming a mother or having children. And I think once you start working with this population, it's just magic. I know a lot of people who are fantastic at working with pain. That is their bread and butter. That's their expertise. That's what lights them up. That is not my experience in chiropractic. And so for me, getting to walk in and see a mom and a baby and an entire family is just the most rewarding thing ever. And we get such instant, profound changes with our littles and with our pregnant mamas that anything else is just not even an option anymore.
I'm really curious if you have the same experience that I have, being a practitioner that gets to have hands-on experience with these babies inside these wombs and feeling their energy. And then once they're born, being able to still have that connection with them. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience feels like for you?
Gosh, it's hard to articulate anything aside from magic, but I mean, I've had moms come and see me before they get pregnant, right? And then as soon as that baby is inside their belly, even before you can feel any sort of palpable movement,
Mm.
you know that baby and you get to know them. And then they do start wiggling and dancing under your fingers when you're working with, round ligament release or things like that. And then when that baby shows up on your table, it's like you've already met lifetimes ago. It's purely magic.
That is absolutely the best way to describe it, the best word to describe it. And in our world in midwifery, when we have that baby being born and they're, just coming into their body and they're looking around and, they hear your voice, it's really cool to be like, oh, you do recognize my voice. Or when we have a baby that needs a little extra assistance, I feel it really makes that difference. And I'm sure in your line of work, you feel the same way. There is this level of trust because these babies are whole cognizant humans and they're so wide open because they haven't gone through these life experiences and built up these walls and these traumas, so to speak, right? That I
Totally.
feel like since they know us, whether it's our voice or our hands or our energy, they're so much more receptive to that touch and to that assistance.
Absolutely. I could see that.
Awesome. So how has your approach to care changed since you started your practice? Or has it at
Well,
all?
yeah, no, that's a great question. It definitely has. And the practice that we have currently here in Southern California is relatively new. We started it in 2021, but I've been in practice since 2017. And so, I've owned practices out of the state. I started up in Seattle area. And like I said, at that time, I was coming out of school really um, painted by my experience, I guess, with, gut issues and things like that. And so I really did start my practice doing more lab work, more, functional assessment, working a lot with supplements and nutraceuticals and diet, and using chiropractic as a pain relief modality, a mobility kind of modality. I worked alongside a naturopath, a health coach. I worked with somebody who did neurofeedback. And so we were really concerned about the nervous system, but in a different way, and mostly with adults. And I felt like I had to be everything for everyone. I needed to be the one stop. I needed to help fix all the problems. And I think that's maybe a common theme among a lot of new practitioners. But since that time, I think that I have learned and realized that the deeper you go and the more specialized you become, the more you can serve people, right? Wearing all the hats and kind of trying to be good at everything is great and it keeps you busy, but it's not necessarily going to be, I think, of the most service to people. So over my time in practice, I have gathered many tools and I have shed just as many. I've really learned the things that help me to show up as the best practitioner for the folks that I want to serve. And so I've gone deep again into kind of infant and pre and postnatal care and have gotten rid of some of the more functional assessments that I've done in the past and really, really focus in on the nervous system specifically. So while I used to do a lot of soft tissue work, a lot of rehab, I just found that convoluted the care that I was able to provide. I still think those are valuable tools, and I have amazing resources for the moms and the babies in our community to refer to, but I don't try to do all the things. My job is to help the brain and the body to connect. And I can do that with a really, really specific, precise assessment and gentle adjustment. And so, as a chiropractor, I think that I've just really whittled down my skill set again to serve my community rather than trying to be everything to everyone.
I love that. That's so amazing. So, Verve, your practice here in Southern California, I think you said started in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's 20, wait, is it 25 right now? Or are we in 20? We're in 25, right? Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh, I can't even keep my years straight. Okay, so in that time, you have grown, and in less than a year, you've opened up two new locations. That is phenomenal expansion. So, what drove the decision to grow the practice by not just one more location, but two in such a short period of time?
That's a great question. And I don't know that I have a short answer for you because it really has been a journey. We opened up Verve in 2021. It was myself in 600 square feet. My husband, if anybody knows him, is very involved. We are best friends and partners in everything, maybe a little codependent, but he was in the back office doing his work from home, work from office, kind of my bodyguard, if you will, because it was just me. I had no front desk, no team members, which was a really special, awesome experience. But I'll be honest, 2021, I got pregnant with my son after a lot of trying and challenges. And I didn't know if I'd want to continue doing chiropractic or working in general. I thought maybe this is my new calling. Maybe motherhood is it for me. And it's amazing what happens when you have children because it literally rocks your world and turns everything upside down. So in 2022, the practice had gained some momentum. We were doing well. It was sustaining itself. But when I had my son, I took a few weeks off, maybe 9 weeks. That's more than a few, but took some time off, had a coverage doctor, and we navigated so many of our own challenges. And I became a completely different person. I evolved and transformed over those 9 weeks, probably longer than that, but really it was this incubator for me. And I came back on fire for my community, for the people that we serve, for this part of Orange County, because I felt like we just lacked the resources and we had seen such transformation with our own son through all the challenges we navigated with chiropractic care. So in 2022, we really kind of set out to change the game for families in North Orange County. And so I would say that that was the beginning of the expansion. And expansion's a really good word because that was really what we were embodying. We wanted to try to expand and grow Verve to help as many families as possible who are navigating the same challenges that we had with Rusty. And so initially that started off with getting a bigger space, right? We expanded physically. And then we brought in some other practitioners. I ended up hiring my first team member. I brought in a doctor to work with me so that we could serve more families. And one thing led to another. And I just fell in love with experience of entrepreneurship just as much as the experience of being a chiropractor. It was a completely different part of my brain, but something that lit me up. And the bigger we got, I knew the more families we could serve. And so the universe just kind of brought us opportunities, and I kept saying yes and following my intuition. And motherhood really, really created this hunger for expansion. And so we leaned into that. My husband, like I said, is my partner. He's been an incredible resource and ally in the process. And, we've got really big vision and really big dreams for where Verve is going to go. And this is just the beginning.
Oh, I'm so excited. It's been so cool to watch from the sidelines to see what you guys have done and to see, how do I phrase this? With your expansion and the opening of the other locations, you have filled them also with really well-known and respected practitioners that, were in private practice or, wherever they were. And that has been really phenomenal as someone in the community to watch the blending of that. Like, that's just really amazing. And I think that speaks hugely on part of your character, that people trust you so much that they're willing to join this mission, right? Like, that's really phenomenal. So with this, what were some of the biggest challenges that you guys faced with expanding?
Well, I completely agree with you. I think the trust that our practitioners have had in us has been the reason that we've been able to do what we've been able to do. And our team is literally the only reason that Verve is what it is today. And I would say that probably equally expanding and finding the right team and building out the right culture has been one of the biggest challenges. Really having high standards and sticking to that, and not just growing for the sake of growing, but making sure that we continue to serve our community with the same quality, with the same passion, with the same love, because I no longer see patients, but it's really important to me that our doctors show up and serve our patients in the same way that I felt called to, in the same way that I did when I was in practice. And, sometimes that takes patience, and sometimes it doesn't match the timeline. We've had, we were sweating a little bit with our Costa Mesa location because our build out was coming to a close and we didn't have a full team yet. But I think every step of the way we've kind of trusted the process and just kept taking aligned action. And the universe has provided. We've ended up with really, really incredible team. And honestly, once we had that team, I think the next biggest challenge was figuring out how to be a good leader, because I feel very confident as a chiropractor. I've been doing it for a long time. I see results, I feel results instantaneously when I work with other humans. Getting in that flow is so natural for me, but nobody tells you or teaches you how to be a good leader. And so showing up in a way where you can continue to inspire your team to show up for the patients, and you can help share the knowledge that you put into practice every day, articulating that to other people and helping them embody that is a skill that has to be developed. And yeah, it's definitely been a journey. It hasn't been a challenge that we haven't been able to overcome, but it's been a work in progress for sure, every step of the way. Just trying to get better every day and continue to serve not just our community, but the people that are trusting me with their livelihood.
And I think that that's phenomenal to keep in mind. I love how you said before that it's not just about growing to grow and staying focused on what that mission is for the community as well as for the practitioners. I think is what really helps the universe to continue to provide for someone like you, right? Showing that gratitude and having that heart in the right place. So the 3 locations, Orange, Long Beach, and Costa Mesa, are now up and running, all 3 of them. Do they all offer the same services? Can you talk a little bit about what each location offers?
Absolutely. So each of our locations, we try to keep as similar as possible so that somebody could go to any of them and have the same experience, right? Of course, we have different humans, different personalities, but our systems are really pretty uniform, and we do provide the same services at each, except our Orange location has a little bit more square footage. So we're able to have our wonderful massage therapist, Jessica, there. She's incredible for pre and postnatal massage. And works with our adults, some of our kiddos too, but mostly prenatal and postpartum massage. And like I said before, it really my journey with chiropractic has been paring down kind of the bigger scope into the more focused, fine-tuned approach with the nervous system. And so at each of our locations, we use nervous system scans. We're looking at the autonomic nervous system. So the parasympathetic versus sympathetic, if people are not familiar, that's the fight or flight versus rest and digest side of the nervous system. We're looking at that on a global scale and on a smaller scale. And then we also look at how the brain and the muscles are communicating so that we understand that energy between the brain and the body. And so all of our locations are using that lens to assess the nervous system on every patient that comes in. The cool thing about that assessment is that it's safe to do on brand new newborns, like day of birth, we could use it on them, and pregnant moms as well. So we're really able to get an objective look in. That's going to happen at all of our locations. And then we focus on chiropractic. We're not mixing in a bunch of other soft tissue and rehab modalities. We do have tools and resources for our families, but the focus is going to be chiropractic, purely trying to get the brain and body to communicate better at every practice. Our practitioners use a combination of techniques. So we use the Webster technique. Obviously, we can talk about that a little bit more, but we're using drop table. We're using an activator, which is a spring-loaded instrument, arthrostim, which is kind of an electrical version of an activator. And then we use diversified, which is that more traditional chiropractic technique that people are familiar with. And all of our doctors are trained across the board in the same techniques, applying them in the same way, and making sure that we have that consistency and quality across the board.
I love it. So you, as we talked about in the very beginning, are so busy. So you're not seeing patients anymore, but you're, running the 3 practices. You've got a kiddo, a little toddler yourself, and we're expecting baby number 2. How do you balance growing your business with maintaining motherhood, pregnancy, and time to focus on yourself to make sure your cup is full?
Balance is a tricky word. I feel like maybe I'm not balanced every day, but that I'm creating synergy in all the different areas, if that makes sense. I found early on when we really started this kind of period of expansion in our lives that I had to do things differently than I was doing them before. And so for me, that meant waking up at 4 a.m., which I know is crazy to a lot of people, but that allowed me time in the morning before my son would wake up from 4 to 7 a.m. predictably. I'm lucky with a good sleeper, but predictably, I had 3 hours to myself, whether that was for working on my own nervous system, right? Doing breath work, meditation, journaling, whether that was moving my body or getting laundry done or whatever. A lot of time it was spent working, let's be honest, right? But those early morning hours let me focus in on the things that I couldn't get done throughout the rest of the day. So even if the rest of my day got away from me, or my son was sick, or, I got called into the office because one of our doctors was sick, I knew that I had accomplished things off that to-do list. So I think kind of carving out that intentional time has been critical for me, which has been a little bit harder with pregnancy because sleep just doesn't come as easily when I'm pregnant. And so, yeah, it's been interesting to navigate this pregnancy and keeping up with everything. But I think my biggest secret weapon is really delegation. And that was hard for me in the beginning. When we first started bringing on team members, when my husband really started helping out a lot more with the company, it felt really scary to give away some of these tasks and responsibilities. And so I was trying to do everything, and it was not good for anyone, right? It's like trying to be everything to everyone, trying to do all the things, be the mom and the entrepreneur and the wife. It's like you can't do it all. So starting to realize the areas that didn't light me up, that didn't serve me, that didn't bring me joy, or that I wasn't the best at, and passing those off to folks that could do it better than me and maybe enjoyed it a little bit more, has been a really big game changer. So that way, when I'm doing something, I can be 100% focused on it. And I know that activity is going to give us the most return in terms of, outcomes for the company or joy for my family. So yeah, I think delegation for sure is absolutely necessary if you're trying to do anything in life, but especially run a company, have a family, be a good mom, and feel fulfilled in it all.
That's such good advice. And it is probably the scariest thing for any entrepreneur to tackle because it's your baby. You're like, I can't. No one's going to do it like I can do it. No one's going to do it in the time frame or whatever. But the irony in it is when we are wearing so many hats and doing so many things, we are not usually providing our best work in all of those areas. Whereas when we can let go and delegate and surrender to trusting someone else to take it over, it does usually flourish beautifully. So that's great advice.
And you know what? Most of the time, when you delegate to somebody correctly or well, which takes time and practice, they do it better than you. Not just good enough, but better. And there's a quote by Dan Martell. I love his book, Buy Back Your Time. Even when people are doing it 80% as good as you, sorry, my brain now. 80% done by someone else is 100% fucking awesome. And
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it's so true because we're so concerned and worried that it's not going to be absolutely amazing. But then as soon as it gets taken off your plate and you see it like that to-do list completed and you were able to focus on your kid or this other task that was potentially only something that you could do, it's such a huge weight lifted and such a relief. It takes practice, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. And even, obviously that feeling of it being accomplished feels amazing and knowing, oh, I didn't have to do it. But having that other perspective of how someone tackles some of those things. So I have Ashley, my admin assistant, and she does the things that I want to cry at think of doing, like all of the back office lab work, billing, financial stuff, updating contracts and agreements and all of that. She handles all of the admin stuff. And it is so relieving to know oh, I've got someone to do it and she's going to get it done. But the way she goes about doing it and the suggestions that she has along the way is my brain doesn't work like that. I would have never thought about it. So just like you said, it makes it that much better, having that extra help of hands, different fresh brain along the way. So
Agreed.
In our world of, us birth workers and people who tend to those that are pregnant and postpartum, people are often wanting to expand their businesses. They're wanting to add on new services because, you get so excited to learn a new technique or a new trade. What is a word of advice you have for other birth workers or healthcare professionals looking to expand their practice in one way or another?
It's a really good question. And I think it's so dependent on who that person is. And I think it's really easy to get shiny object syndrome, right? Whether that's with expanding the business or bringing on new tools and different seminars and all the things. But I think really the first step is going inward and figuring out what you want and why, right? Like literally get a journal out and journal your perfect day. Like no limitations to what that day could look like, right? If everything was perfect and aligned and you didn't have anything stopping you, what would you do and how would you do it? And then work towards that, right? Or reverse engineer it so that you can create that perfect day. I think so many times we have this maybe imposter syndrome or something that tells us we need more to be better. But I think that if we truly just take a minute to understand who we want to show up as, we'll realize that we don't need all of the other stuff. That being said, sometimes there is a technique or a seminar or something out there that's going to make you a more well-rounded practitioner, or that will build up your confidence, because sometimes it's not even about the tool, it's about how you feel, right, as the person that provides the service. And so I think that if you're doing things for the right reasons, because it's going to light you up and it's going to help you show up in the best version of yourself, or the thing that will create fulfillment for you, then do it. But if it's not, you probably don't need it, right? And then I think too, so many of us want to grow our businesses because that's just what somebody else down the street is doing, right? We want to hire a team member because our friend over there did it, or, whatever. And I think that comparison really is the thief of joy. And I think that it's so important to get clear on what kind of life you want, right? For me in particular, I know that being in a practice 5 days a week, which is where I was before, serving folks day in and day out, like from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., not having breakfast with my son, not being there when he got home from school, just being there at bedtime. I'm exhausted, he's exhausted. Like that wasn't the life that I wanted. I wanted a life where I had flexibility. I knew that I was willing to hustle in his early years, but probably not in his later years when he has more memory of things. And so I'm reverse engineering the life that I want to live, even if it means a little bit more work up front, right? But for some folks, I know that showing up every day, getting their hands on people, being able to work, in flow as a practitioner, which I definitely miss at times, but I think that that is the reason that they're drawn to the work that we do as birth workers, or folks that work with babies and pre and postnatal women. So to hire out and delegate the hands-on portion wouldn't be fulfilling. It wouldn't lead those people to joy. So I think the most important thing is getting really crystal clear on what you want your life to look like, and then building it out from there. And then also realizing that you're enough, and that the tools that you have, the way that you show up is enough. And you don't need to keep adding the certification and the techniques and all the things just because.
That is such beautiful advice. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, of course, people are finding you in your skill and your trade, but they come to you usually for who you are. And oh man, I can't wait to even re-listen to what you just said, because that was such good advice. And I think everyone, no matter if they work in our field or wherever, it's stay true to who you are. Obviously know your vision, know what you want to do, how you want to show up, what you want your life to look like, but you do not need all those other things to get more business or to get, the ideal customer, because at the end of the day, they're going to come to you because you're who you are, not because you're trying to act like someone else or gain the same certifications as the next person. Like that's like the best sort of advice.
Exactly. I think, just to add on top of that before we move on, I think we get so caught up in that comparison game, and we want to add as many designations and titles and things, but people don't care about your titles. People aren't looking at my name and checking how many letters come after it. They want to know if I'm going to be able to get them the outcome that they're looking for. Is my baby going to sleep better if I bring them to you? Am I going to have a better birth if I come to you? And if the answer is yes, then girl, stop. You've done it. I think, again, comparison really is the thief of joy. So if you can deliver, if you can take care of your people, then lean into that.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Okay, so can we talk a little bit about you and your personal journey? Because alongside obviously being this badass business owner, you have had quite the journey into motherhood. So, both of your babes conceived through IVF. Can you share a little bit about your journey in fertility?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is maybe a little harder to navigate and answer. And with pregnancy hormones, I can't say that I won't cry, but no, it started in 2020. Kyle and I had been together for about 5 years at that point. We knew we were going to be getting married. He had proposed, and the world shut down. And so we canceled our wedding. And it was like, well, we don't have this big thing that we're kind of waiting for. We might as well start trying. And so we did. And, being in the field and, knowing as much as I think a lot of us do, I knew exactly what to do, how to time things, what to look for. I optimized from the beginning. I made sure that my baseline labs were good, checked my thyroid, all the things. And as much as we tried month over month and we timed everything right, and like there were no reasons that we shouldn't be getting pregnant. So about 9 months into that process, I started questioning, what was going on. And so we really at that point started implementing anything and everything from an environmental perspective, right? We completely cleaned up our diet even beyond where it was before. I started working with a functional medicine practitioner to make sure that my labs were not just not pathological, but like truly optimized from somebody else's perspective. We made sure that we weren't drinking alcohol. We really, really did all the things in our control that, typically are going to help. We started doing acupuncture. And after a year of not getting pregnant, not even close, not even a little bit, we ended up going to do some testing with a reproductive endocrinologist. And I have a history of health issues, as I mentioned before, that started in high school, but have kind of followed me through my life. And so, while there was some doubt there was nothing in particular that should have been a huge red flag, but enough that we started exploring, and all of our tests came back completely normal. Kyle's sperm looked great. My everything looked good. I mean, they really run the gamut on you when you are going in for subfertility or infertility. Everything was open and clear. I had no endometriosis, no autoimmune factors that they test for. And so we decided to get some help and go with some intervention. And so the first step of that was using Clomid, which is a drug that helps with ovulation, and IUI. And so actually, I think we might have tried Clomid before, but we proceeded to go to Clomid with IUI. And the first IUI that we did, we got pregnant, which was a miracle, it felt like. And it was a chemical pregnancy. So before we ever saw a heartbeat, we lost the pregnancy, numbers started going down. And it was, sorry, give me 1 second. It was probably the worst thing that's ever happened in my life. And I've been through some shit. I couldn't leave my room for a week. I know everybody handles things differently, but it really, really impacted us. It was probably just as hard on Kyle having to support me through that and having to go through that loss as well. But we weren't going to do that again. So we did try one more round of IUI. It was unsuccessful. And at that point, we had a really hard conversation because as much as I feel as a chiropractor and as a natural health practitioner that my body is capable of healing, it is, capable of miracles, I also am an impatient person, first of all. And I also knew that the waiting and the potential loss ahead of us, if we didn't try something different, would crush me. And so we had to make the hard decision to go with something that didn't really fully align with our values physically, physiologically, in order to spare ourselves the emotional wreckage that could have come, right? And so we decided to go into IVF. And luckily we had coverage. I know a lot of people don't, but Kyle has worked for corporate companies. And so it was, after the initial kind of emotional turmoil of making that decision, it was a fairly easy decision to move forward. And so we navigated the initial phases of IVF with a doctor in Beverly Hills, which is where we lived at the time. And we got really lucky. We did one round of IVF. We tested our embryos. We had a pretty high level of attrition, so something to say for, egg quality, despite all of my efforts to improve that. And let me back up a little bit. It wasn't just a straight IVF cycle. The doctor that we worked with was fairly aggressive. And I felt shame around this for a long time because, again, as a chiropractor, as a natural health practitioner, I feel like there's so much pressure to trust your body to do things naturally. Like any sort of intervention or drug is kind of, not an okay thing to do. But our doctor was aggressive and she said, look, you've got a history of things that are kind of immune involved. And so let's go with an autoimmune protocol. So we did all the things on our first transfer ever. I was on blood thinners. I was on prednisone. Again, it was like going against my very nature to do this, but I knew at my core that I trusted her and I trusted the process. And we now have a healthy 2.5-year-old perfect little boy who is giving us a run for our money. But yeah, it kind of, as much as it took me out of trust in my body, it brought me back to trust in my body that, I was capable of the very thing that I felt like I was put on earth to do, right? To conceive and grow and bear a child. So it was very redemptive, actually, even though it was really hard.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable and opening up with that. And I think that touches on so many different levels too on the journey of motherhood and parenthood, especially for those that are within our community of sometimes we have to make these hard decisions to explore other avenues that we haven't always been so open to, or for some, even are openly against, and it's, I feel like it's a part of that juggle and that balance of parenthood of not everything looks the way we hope it to look, and being open to those things can be a healing journey. It can be an empowering journey. And there's a lot to it if we are open to exploring it. So as a chiropractor, did you use any holistic or other complementary approaches alongside your fertility journey with the whole gamut of things you went through?
Absolutely. Yeah, leading up to both, we've done 2 rounds now. So we had to do another retrieval for our daughter that I'm pregnant with now. And both rounds, I really took a focus on nutraceuticals for optimizing egg health. And there's, a whole list of those different supplements and things that are good for mitochondrial function, which help reduce oxidative stress and improve egg quality and all that. So kind of functional medicine was a cornerstone of the foundation, I think, for our IVF journey. I put my husband on all the supplements too, to make sure his sperm was as healthy as possible. And, really focused on our diet. There was a big emphasis on kind of an anti-inflammatory component to our diet. And then in terms of other modalities, I get adjusted all the time. I get adjusted at least once a week. My entire family does. I know that that's the best way to regulate the nervous system ongoing. And so, that was, I think, a biggest kind of core tool that I used that I maybe go over too quickly sometimes because it's such a fundamental part of my life. But I was also getting acupuncture, both of my retrievals and transfers. I've gotten acupuncture. And then also focusing on helping my body, detox, making sure I was keeping as non-toxic a home as possible. So I wasn't adding more chemical stress to my body while I was, undergoing all of the medications that I was on. And
Amazing.
just making sure to have that balance as best as possible.
That's wonderful. And obviously the emotional toll that you go through navigating the IVF journey, as well as a loss, any type of loss, is heavy. So what are some things that help you, that you felt navigate that? And what are some words of advice you have for other hopeful moms experiencing that journey right now?
Gosh, those are 2 different things, right? So I think for me personally, making sure that I had the tools to help with my mental health during that process. specifically for me, meditation was critical, especially the first time. I would say that the second time, because I had that redemptive experience with my son, I birthed him, he was healthy. I trusted my body a little bit more. I was more out of fear, more into faith. In the process, it's been easier with her emotionally. But with him, I woke up every morning and I went straight out to my meditation cushion. And that was how I started my day. If I had, thoughts during the day that were not productive, I would try to take myself on a walk, do a walking meditation. Breath work was really big, journaling, leaning into the trust and kind of an abundance mindset when it's a very much a time of scarcity and fear, I think has been really, really, really helpful. And it's not passive. I don't think you can go through something like this and expect that it's just going to be easier, that you can handle it on your own. I think also leaning on your people, right? And having a safe space where you can go and just be vulnerable and cry, or be angry, or talk about not wanting to hear pregnancy announcements, or having those safe spaces to just explore all the feelings that come along with it, I think is really, really important when you try to bottle everything in or handle it kind of on your own without using resources, tools, and other people. It can be so much harder. And I think my advice for people would be to tune everyone else out. Again, kind of like we talked about earlier with practitioners, it's get clear on the things that matter to you and don't listen to everyone else, because your grandma's going to tell you that if you just relax, or your neighbor's going to say if you go on vacation, you'll get knocked up there. And it's like, you just have to expect that everybody is well-meaning, but that they are going to have terrible advice. And sometimes it is infuriating. And so you just have to kind of put on this blank smile and nod at people and then completely let it go, because there's so much that won't serve you. And so again, just getting clear on what matters to you. Is it going to be trying all the things and exhausting all the options? For me, going 3 years, having more losses potentially was not an option. And so taking a more aggressive route was the best thing for me. But for somebody else, IVF might be worse for their mental health, right? Or rushing to something with the questions of what if I had waited longer? So I think always quieting down, going inward and figuring out, the personal stuff rather than consuming and letting other people dictate how you feel or kind of what you should be doing or focusing on.
Great advice. Now, for others that their loved ones are navigating the IVF path, what pieces of advice do you have for them to be of good support persons during that time?
I think just realize that as much as you want to help, a lot of times the things that you suggest are not helpful unless you've navigated it yourself. And even if you've navigated it yourself, your journey is not someone else's journey. So I think rather than coming in with advice or things that they can try or what your best friend's college roommate did to get pregnant, it's just show up and hold space for people, and ask them what they need and ask them how does it feel? How are you doing? Do you want to talk about it? I think a lot of times, especially with loss, we're afraid to talk about it. We're afraid to mention it. We don't want to bring it up because we don't want to make them sad. And it's sometimes people just need to get it off their chest and talk through it and feel the feelings and cry and feel like someone's there for them. So I think if we can show up with less assumptions about how to help and ask more questions, I think that that's a really good way to support people.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. So your first birth with little Rusty was a hospital birth, and this time you have chose the path of a home birth. What made you decide to have a home birth for this birth?
I would have loved to have a home birth with Rusty. My entire experience with, pregnancy and birth was so cloaked in fear the first time that everything I thought I wanted to do before I got pregnant with him kind of went out the window. My husband was also very afraid. He's also from a very medical allopathic family. And so hospital birth is the way that people do it. And so I think that all compounded into the decision to have Rusty at a hospital. And we actually made a last minute decision to switch from an OB to midwives we didn't think it was going to be as last minute as it was, but I had Rusty early. And so that, all of that was, again, so created from this place of scarcity and fear that we were navigating because of the journey. So this time, after having the hospital birth that I did, which was, I think, kind of atypical for a hospital birth, I felt very confident in my body, very empowered by my birth experience, even though it was in a hospital with, a completely different environment that I, would have preferred the first time. I knew inherently this time that it was going to be okay, that I could do it. I knew that I wanted to be home, the safety of my home, the comfort of my home. I knew that I wanted to be with a provider like you. And I'm so grateful that you're going to be on my birth team. I just knew that I wanted to do it different this time. And I trusted myself, my body, and my baby. So it's been really easy actually to make the decision and to go that route. And this is kind of what I wish I could have done the first time, but I was too afraid.
Understood. And so your perspective around birth, it doesn't seem that the perspective changed as much as just the trust and elimination of fear. What about your husband? What about Kyle's perspective? Has that shifted at all going this path now?
I think so. I think so. He obviously saw that I could do it, right? I think that's a fear, right, for men who have no experience with birth, is that it's going to be this really big, scary thing, and it's traumatic, and and I am not a birthing person who has lots of loud noises. Again, my theme is that I go inward. So I think he saw that I was able to handle an unmedicated birth in a hospital. And so he gained some confidence in my abilities. He saw that there was a lot of biological fluid, a lot of blood for the first time. So I think he came out of that birth a little bit more afraid than I did, which I can't, fault him for. But after having conversations with other people that have had home births, after speaking with you during our consultation, I think he began to build up that confidence and that trust. And he was like, oh, wait, I don't have to sleep on that hospital bed, and we get to just lay in our bed, and there'll be people at our home helping to take care of us. Like, that actually sounds really cozy and really nice. And so, yeah, his perspective has completely transformed. I think he probably carries a little bit more fear than I do, but he's not a birth worker. He doesn't see birth happen every day all around him. And so, he's learning to trust through me. So it's been really cool to watch.
I love it. Okay, cool. So as a prenatal chiropractor, you understand the body in a unique way. I mean, and you are so knowledgeable. You are like so wickedly smart in general, but has this influenced how you specifically prepare for birth?
First of all, thank you. How could it not, right? I mean, I always joke with people that I don't know how anybody navigates pregnancy without prenatal chiropractic. But I really mean it. I don't know how people go through pregnancy without prenatal chiropractic, because it's made such a big impact. Now, I don't have anything to compare it to, right? But I've had such beautiful, smooth pregnancies and such comfortable pregnancies. My first birth was pretty amazing, all things considered. And so prenatal chiropractic is the cornerstone of my preparation for birth. It's my non-negotiable. I get adjusted from the moment that before I conceive, but I start Webster from the moment I know that I'm pregnant. There are modifications that we can make in early pregnancy. It's such a gentle technique, but it really is, I think, so important in preparation. But I also know that there are certain things that can compromise baby's ability to find the ideal position, right outside of just getting adjusted or not getting adjusted, but the way that I move my body, making an effort to continually move my body. It's not just for fitness or for health. It's like, I know that my pelvic mobility, my alignment, the way my baby can find that position is so important, and so dependent on that movement. I think it really does kind of make an impact on my day-to-day preparation for sure. I would never not get adjusted in pregnancy. I think it makes such a big difference on the pregnancy itself and also the birth experience.
Absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit about Webster technique, and what does that mean for those that aren't familiar? What's the difference between Webster versus non-Webster? Kind of dive into that for me.
Totally. So, Webster is a really specific technique that looks at and is concerned with the pelvis. So, there are chiropractors that will adjust pregnant women who are not Webster certified, and they're doing probably a lot of similar adjustments to Webster certified chiropractors, but Webster is going to be a it's going to encompass more. So we're going to do more things that maybe a non-Webster chiropractor would. And we're avoiding certain movements and adjustments because of the implications on the pelvis and the uterus. So Webster specifically is looking to balance the pelvis, and we do that from both the front and the back of the body. So in the back of the body, we're looking at the sacrum, which is the triangle-shaped bone at the very bottom of the spine. We're looking at kind of those SI joints that it connects to. We're looking at the muscles that go from that sacrum, so kind of right where the glutes are, out to the hips. And we're looking at the sacrotuberous ligament. And so we're making sure that we have as much balance in that pelvis from the backside as possible. And then going around to the front, making sure that the pubic bone, right, which both the pelvis comes together at the front at the pubic bone, that we have good alignment there, that we have not too much tension in the hip flexors or the round ligaments, because that can really impact baby's position, so that all around that bowl of the pelvis is going to move as best as possible and is going to have as much open space as possible so that baby can find that perfect position for the most optimal pregnancy and birth. So again, we're doing some specific soft tissue technique releases, balancing things that other chiropractors are not. And we're also not doing any twisting or popping of the pelvis to make sure that we're not putting unnecessary tension or strain on the uterus, which can just not be ideal for, again, positioning and for comfort of mom, especially when we have relaxin hormone, making everything, relatively unstable. So we use drop technique instead of the twisting or popping when women are pregnant.
Awesome. And I know we've talked a lot about the importance of regular chiropractic care during pregnancy, but for someone who's more apprehensive, has maybe not seen a chiropractor ever or only a few times and doesn't feel comfortable doing it in pregnancy, can you talk a little bit about, in your experience, the benefits of it? So I know you just touched on how it's supporting the pelvis and how it's supporting potentially the birth and baby positioning. But let's talk about some of the common complaints that people come to you if they're not used to just coming because they know they should, and the benefits of going regularly, but the more specific complaints that you've seen chiropractic care prenatally help.
Totally. So, anything that has to do with the low back and the pelvis, where that baby is starting to take up space, get bigger, grow, and change our biomechanics, chiropractic is going to be a really, really powerful tool. So when women are coming in with low back pain, when they have, pelvic pain, symphysis pubic dysfunction, or that pubic pain at the front, if we're having, we see a lot of moms who have breech presentation, and there's a common misconception that Webster flips babies. We do not. That's an ECV, right? Or those are different techniques. We're not OBs, we're not midwives, and so we are not moving babies, but we create optimal positioning. A lot of women just don't feel like they have the same mobility or capacity for movement when they get pregnant because of how things are shifting and changing. And so chiropractic is really, really helpful with maintaining that mobility, because what happens is our body gets so loose from all the relaxin hormone. It's kind of counterintuitive, but our muscles will then try to compensate by tightening up and creating restrictions. And so telling the brain that the body is safe through, again, those specific chiropractic adjustments that talk to those, mechanical receptors, nerve receptors in the body, helps the body to stay relaxed and to stay mobile. And then outside of the pelvis, right, a lot of pregnant moms are dealing with headaches, neck pain. Especially if you've got toddlers or little ones that you're caring for while you're pregnant, there's a lot of stress and strain on the body, and our body is changing so drastically in this time. Chiropractic really helps with any of those aches and pains. But I would say probably the biggest benefits are, aches and pains in general, whether it's pregnancy specific or more generalized through the body, making sure we maintain that mobility, pelvic alignment and soft tissue alignment for babies finding the right position, and then optimizing for labor and birth itself. The research has some pretty profound impacts on labor and birth in terms of shortening labor times, making sure that labor and birth itself is as comfortable as possible, which we know is going to be different for everybody. But reporting does show an improvement with consistent chiropractic care. Labor time. Did I say labor time already?
I think
Labor
so.
time, comfort in labor, and then actually decreased interventions. So for folks that end up at a hospital by choice or not, those who've had consistent chiropractic care have less interventions on average. That's going to be, epidurals, inductions, and C-sections. So it's
I
pretty
can,
powerful.
yeah, and I can imagine since we are working on, that alignment and helping to aid with those ligaments and those tissues, like you had mentioned headaches, but I'm sure acid reflux, heartburn. Obviously, if you're more comfortable, you're going to sleep better. And that's such a huge complaint. So, I mean, to me, it's a
Yes.
no brainer, but I'll still occasionally, someone will come in here and I'll be like, so are you seeing a chiropractor? And they'll look at me. No, I'm like, okay, well, let's do it. It's going to help you. So I love that you ran through that. What are some of the most common misconceptions about chiropractic care in pregnancy that you've heard?
I think first and foremost, kind of to your point, that it's scary or that it's unsafe during pregnancy. And I think people need to know, first of all, know that you have options in terms of chiropractors. They are not all the same. Going to somebody who specializes in pregnancy is going to be a completely different experience than going to somebody who doesn't specialize in pregnancy. And so, chiropractic is very, very safe. And again, we use different techniques during pregnancy than we use outside of pregnancy. And so it's very gentle. Also, you can go to somebody that uses different types of modalities. We use different tools and things because there isn't one adjustment that's going to be right for every person. So for our folks that are a little more afraid of adjustments, don't like the popping or clicking, we absolutely have ways that we can adjust without using any of those types of adjustments, if that makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think another big one is that we flip babies. We do not flip babies.
Right.
you know, but
No
a lot of
flipping
babies
babies.
will turn when
Right.
when moms start getting adjusted because we just create that optimal space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to motherhood, business, and the other B word, balance, what are you doing to prepare for maternity leave now running three practices and having a toddler?
Oh, Jesse, what am I doing to prepare? I was
This is a bit of a
laughing.
prenatal visit snuck into this conversation.
I know I'm going to get in trouble. No, it's been interesting this time. I feel like because I have so much trust in the birth process itself and my body and my baby, and I have such a great birth team. I'm so lucky to have you. I also have an amazing doula. In terms of the birth itself, I feel like I've had to plan less actually. I will be taking some birth prep coursework that is less focused on the birth itself, more about my mindset, meditation, breath work during birth. And in terms of maternity leave, I think just really setting up the kind of downstream delegation, knowing who's going to take over what. I don't know how long I'm going to take off this time. Everybody keeps asking me that. It's such a weird question because Verve is my baby too, and I can't
Hmm.
imagine not responding to the messages from my team. But we'll take that one day at a time. But I think creating kind of the roadmap so that they know there are boundaries there, right? That I won't be available for a certain period of time. We are bringing in all of the help, some hired help, a lot of family help, making sure we have plenty meals available. I think for me, the hardest time is that fourth trimester, in terms of the physical, the mental, all of the things. And so just making sure that when I haven't slept enough, when I haven't had time to cook or I don't have the energy to do those things, that I have those resources available and I've got support. And so we're working on planning all of that now, but it'll probably be a nice game time preparation for us.
And so, what I hear you saying is that you are putting a strong emphasis on a postpartum support plan. And
Yes,
that
ma'am.
is beautiful. And I feel like, especially first time families, there is such an emphasis on the fun and shiny things, like you mentioned earlier, of, okay, I want to buy all the things, I want to have a baby shower, and then I'm going to plan for the birth, right? Of course, we want you to plan for the birth, but I tell everyone, birth is a physiological event. Your body's going to do it, whether you're ready or not. I want you to be prepared 100%. Don't, misunderstand what I'm saying. But postpartum is so different. And unfortunately, we don't have the systems and the community in place like we are designed as, in my opinion, as pack mammals as we're supposed to have. We don't live in a village where we have so many other people available to assist us. And so postpartum people struggle. That fourth trimester is usually a lot harder because A, not enough people talk to us about it, but B, we were so busy planning for the birth and, buying all the things. And so I love that you are putting an emphasis on that postpartum support and having a plan in place. Because regardless if it's your first or your fifth baby, regardless if you have a really cush, corporate job with banging benefits and you get to be out for a year, or you're self-employed, you know what I mean? Like, everyone needs that postpartum support plan because you do not know how everything's going to unfold. We know how we want it to. We know how we envision and plan for it to, but at the end of the day, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know how the birth is going to go. We don't know how immediate postpartum is going to go, how, lactation or breastfeeding is going to go, how our other children are going to adjust, and what is going to be the state of the world, So there are so many things out of our control, and planning accordingly is awesome and highly encouraged. So I love that you are putting an emphasis on that. Okay, so our final thoughts and tidbits of advice from the amazing Dr. Danielle. What do you wish more pregnant women knew about chiropractic care and body alignment?
That is an excellent question. I think that you don't have to wait to have a problem or be in pain or be suffering to get help and to use us as a resource. Your brain dictates everything that happens in your body, right? That communication between brain and body. And chiropractic is so much more than, rehab and soft tissue release and pain relief. It is about helping your brain and body communicate better, which means everything will work better. To your point, sleep, digestion, of course, comfort, alignment, all the things that we talked about. And so being proactive with chiropractic care is actually going to get you the results and the outcomes that you're looking for, whether or not chiropractic is a resource or a tool that will get there. But if you want better sleep, if you want your body to work better in general, if you want to have a beautiful birth experience, it is one tool that will help across the board. And again, the best time to start is before you have problems.
Absolutely. And what's one piece of advice you'd give a mom or a family considering a home birth for the first time?
I mean, do your research, but find a human that makes you feel safe. Find, a provider that you want to spend time with, who you feel comfortable being vulnerable around, because your body, like you said, it's a physiological process. It's going to happen whether you're ready or not. But I think being in that parasympathetic, that rest, digest, heal, that safe place really, really depends on your environment. Home is a really big piece of that, but finding the right provider, I think, is so important for getting in the right state to have that awesome birth.
Absolutely. That was the driving force to why I even stepped into birth work, was because of my experience with an ill-fit provider. And I tell everyone, home birth, I don't think is for everyone, but everyone deserves to have a provider that aligns with them, that they feel all the feels that they want to feel. Some people don't want someone super warm and fuzzy, and that's okay. They want someone more matter of fact. But finding that provider that aligns with you, with your vision for your perfect birth. I'm so passionate about that on my website, I have a free handout for questions, like over 50 questions to ask every type of provider, whether you're having a home birth, to interview a midwife, to interview a birth center, to interview an OB, because I think that is so key to the outcome of the birth experience is the provider you have.
Totally agree.
So any last words of wisdom for those navigating infertility or on the IVF journey?
Just know that your baby is coming at the right time for you. It's so hard to trust the process, but trust the process. It probably will not end up looking like you expect it to look like, and that's okay. Just keep taking the next right step for you and your family, and know that somehow, some way, and sometime that baby is coming.
I love it. You are so amazing. I love you dearly. Thank you so much for being here. So, how can our wonderful listeners get connected with you, get connected with Verve, and just know more and hopefully come and see you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is vervefamilychiropractic.com. Verve is VERVE. And our Instagram handle is Verve Chiropractic OC. If you want to come follow me personally, see the journey, see my crazy toddler, and probably a little bit about home birth, you can follow me at Dr. Roach, just like the bug.
I love it. Thank you so much. I'll make sure I put all of that in the show notes too. And hopefully we'll be able to do another one of these after Sweet Little Girl is with us and talk about your home birth.
I can't wait for that. Thanks, Jessie.
Thank you, Danielle. And thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you soon. Thank you for joining me on this journey of growth, connection, and conscious living. If you found value in today's episode, share it with someone you love, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment. Follow me on Instagram at Gold Soul Midwifery and sign up for the newsletter to stay connected and in the loop. Until next time, stay grounded, keep growing, and remember, your gold soul shines brightest through the beautiful and messy moments of life.